We're not going to mess with anything right now. We're just going to get in there. Roll credit, wait for Destiny 3. I mean, this kind of is Destiny 3. That's kind of been the running theory that if we were going to get Destiny 3, this is how it would have started. So, realistic. Well, so much for all that enthusiasm, eh? So, Destiny 2 Lightfall. I want to talk about it today. I know it's not exactly my normal area of expertise in terms of what we do on the channel, the type of content that I do. It's not going to be of interest to plenty of people on the channel, but much like when I did my Lightfall release day stream, Destiny is important to me as a franchise. It's something that is of interest to me. There's a reason that my icon is my guardian. And when a expansion comes out like Lightfall, that has everything going for it and has no reason to fail based off of the successes of the previous year and the setup of the narrative and all that type of fun stuff, only to then turn around and fail terribly. That makes me as a fan want to talk about it. So I hope you will forgive me for steering a little bit further away from our like narrative games, tactics games sort of basis here on the channel, but I just wanted to talk about this today. So video is going to be two parts. First part, we're going to be talking about the expansion as a whole, why I and everyone else thinks it's a failure. As I'm sure you saw from the thumbnail, I've mostly negative on Steam, even huge pillars of the community like My Name is Bife, absolutely shredding it. It's not good. It's not good. So I want to talk about why it's not good, but then also highlight some of the parts that are good. But then I also want to go over the build that I put together for the Legendary Solo campaign, because that's how I experienced the story. And the build I have is actually a lot of fun. Like, the gameplay in Destiny is still excellent. And I want to highlight that build because I think it's just a good time, and I think it'll be fun to show off. But first off, we're going to talk about the actual expansion, and I'm wary about putting too much on screen right now, as apparently, I learned about this just as I was setting up to do the video, people have been getting a lot of copyright strikes, and not even Bungie is sure why. Don't know if it's because of music or footage or whatever, but I'm going to be very sparse with what I show, so I hope you don't mind me talking to the camera until I actually put my build up on screen. So, issue number one with Lightfall. It's what everyone's talking about, the narrative. The narrative is atrocious. The writing is atrocious. This is some of the worst writing and storytelling we've had in Destiny's history. Period. From D1 vanilla to now. Like, I would put this quality up there with, like, Curse of Osiris and Warmind. Two expansions along with, you know, year one of D2 that nearly killed the franchise and made Bungie go into full emergency mode to make Forsaken, which was extremely well made and extremely successful. And they said they can never do it again because it was such a drain on the team. But, like, maybe stop putting out bad product. I don't know. So the narrative. Why is the narrative bad? We're not going to get into, like, spoilers here. But just why is the narrative bad? The narrative is bad because it's clearly something that was cut in half to allow a new story to be built in the middle of its two halves. Because this was originally supposed to be the final expansion in Destiny 2's Light and Darkness saga. Then they announced that we'd be getting the final shape. One more expansion because they needed more room to properly tell the story. Well, that leaves us with the beginning cutscene of Lightfall and the ending cutscene of Lightfall clearly being the same cutscene that just got sliced in half. That was probably going to be the intro cutscene for what Lightfall was originally going to be as the final expansion that would lead into the events of everything that was going to happen. And they made a story that could fit into that gap to buy themselves time or to milk more money out of players if you want to be particularly uncharitable. So this leads us to this plot where we go to Neptune, a location that has been hinted at and has been discussed over the past year as a potential place of interest. So it's not like it's just a completely out of left field thing. The issue is once we get there, the tone dramatically shifts. If you look at the first cutscene of Lightfall, and this is not spoilers, like this is in the marketing material, this is literally the first thing that happens as soon as you open the game. So don't try and tell me this is spoilers. Like you see the Witness, the big bad of Destiny, assaulting Earth. People are dying. There's madness on the comms. People are yelling about needing to retreat. The Witness is just untouched with a flick of its wrist. Cuts a group of Guardians and their ships into shreds on an atomic level. They literally just come apart at the seams. And we're in a doomsday scenario. Like, this is the end of the world as we know it. The Witness goes to interact with the Traveler. Everything looks like it's falling apart. And Osiris says now more than ever is when we need to go to Neptune. He's going. Because whatever's there may be the only thing that can fix this or stop it or do something. Okay, fair enough. Reasonable. Clearly nothing we're doing has been able to have any dent on anything. Let's try something different. So we join him. We go to Neptune. And the intro mission is really good. Has that menacing aura of shit is hitting the fan and we need to do something about it. And then we land on Neptune. And all drama and gravitas get thrown out the window. Gone. In its place, we have one of the most poorly written characters, poorly performed characters, poorly voice synthesized characters in the Cloud Strider Nimbus. And their mentor, Rohan, who unfortunately doesn't get nearly as much screen time because Rohan is, of the two, far more interesting as a character. And Nimbus takes all the worst aspects of a cartoon hero protagonist and a Jersey Shore surfer dude, and it takes all of the narrative tension and just smashes it over their giant knee. Suddenly we have quips and fist bumps and like pithy jokes when literally 10 minutes prior we watched a group of Guardians, one of the most powerful forces up to this point in the universe, and their ghosts, paracausal entities, get just unraveled at the flick of a being's hand. And then we wind up here. And you know what? We are going to get into a little bit of spoilers here because I have to talk about it. If you don't want any story spoilers for two major story points near the end of the campaign in Lightfall, skip ahead. I'll have a timestamp on screen. Okay? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There are two major events that show the incredible lack of any sort of sympathetic character trait in Nimbus that occurs in the campaign, and they both revolve around character death. The first, again, spoiler, is when Rohan dies. Rohan sacrifices himself to do something with the radial mast, which is a whole other thing we'll get into in a second. Sacrifices himself to destroy it somehow. How can a Cloud Strider who is roundly not supposed to be paracausal in any capacity able to damage a paracausal device? Not explained. If you don't know what paracausal means, it's basically the descriptor of what is magic in the world of Destiny. Forces beyond like the physical forces of reality, essentially. This happens, and even though Rohan is Nimbus's mentor, Rohan is the one who is training them to take over as the next Cloud Strider. Nimbus has all of 2 lines of mournful dialogue before saying this. Okay. Making jokes immediately about the death of their mentor. Kind of kills all interest in the story, and the tone just doesn't match at all, again, with what's supposed to be happening. Like, literally, Nimbus's home is being invaded by the forces of darkness. Our home has, as far as we know, been taken over by the forces of darkness, and we're cracking jokes about their mentor being dead. Okay. Then, comes the real kicker. When you finish the campaign, you beat the final boss. The final boss, again, spoilers, is Callus, Emperor of the Shadow Legion, former Emperor of the Cabal, father to Empress Keitel, who's one of our allies. We kill him in what was a pretty poorly designed boss fight on Solo Legendary, but again, we'll get into that in a second. And in the dramatic moment where Keitel is having some level of mourning, not for the fact that her father is dead, but for the fact that this is what became of her father, and feeling that sense of relief that it's over, Nimbus tries to fist bump her in celebration. Nimbus knows that Callus is Keitel's father. Nimbus is fully aware of this. Or supposed to be. Tries to fist bump her. When she rightfully shuts them down, Nimbus tries to fist bump us. And we reciprocate, which was disgusting. So, yeah. Every bit of dialogue that comes out of Nimbus's mouth, a lot of the dialogue that comes out of Osiris's mouth is terrible. The actual narrative plot threads make no sense. Let's talk about that radial mast that I mentioned and the veil, which is supposed to be a very powerful artifact, paracausal, linked to the Traveler in some capacity. What is it? We don't know. Apparently the characters know. They act like we're supposed to know. Nothing's ever said. Nothing's ever told to us. We find it at the end, and it's a bunch of roots hanging down out of some sort of mechanical-looking turnip that just serve as a boss arena. I beat the campaign. The campaign's over. There's some post-game stuff. From what I understand, that focuses more on the world-building of Neomuna. It doesn't actually answer any questions. Why are we here? Why is this artifact of import? Oh, apparently it was used... Again, spoilers. We're talking spoilers. We can't not. Apparently, it killed the Traveler somehow, or it allowed the Witness to kill the Traveler, but we still have our light. We still have all of our powers. Then the characters go from talking about the Traveler's dead to just the Traveler is gone. Which is it? We don't know. We don't see. The last thing we see is the second half of the cutscene that's clearly meant to be the same cutscene from the start of the expansion, as the Witness just cuts a giant paracausal pyramid triangle into the Traveler and goes inside. And that's it. We can't follow it. We tried. Probes can't get through, apparently. Come back next time. Pay us more money to find out where this story goes. Like, when you have My Name is Bife, who is one of those people who does his utter best to be polite and understanding and give constructive criticism, is audibly angry and distressed, and literally in his video directly asking the narrative team, how have you failed to live up to the basics of narrative storytelling 101? What happened to lead into this backward slide into mediocrity? Those are pretty much direct quotes. Those are his words, if not exactly regurgitated exactly. I mean, I don't know how you're supposed to be okay with it. I don't know. This is the penultimate chapter in this saga of Destiny, this 10-year journey that has had its ups and downs. But this is the point where everything is supposed to start coming to a head. And the ball hasn't just been dropped. The ball got dropped, shot, and thrown into the furnace. I don't know what they're supposed to do to come back from this. I just don't know. Moving on to some gameplay stuff. Solo Legendary campaign was a far worse experience than it was in Witch Queen. You know, I did the full Solo Legendary campaign in Witch Queen. First thing, it was awesome. There was some frustrating moments, of course, but that's just to be expected from a difficult piece of solo shooter content. It didn't feel like it was poorly designed necessarily. There was one encounter in Witch Queen that I would argue maybe was a little ungenerous with checkpoints, but I can deal with that. Lightfall has numerous missions that just have poor design. Bullet spongy enemies for the sake of fake difficulty. Instant death traps for the sake of fake difficulty. And like that final boss, man. The spectacle of the final fight with Callus was really cool. And I was actually very excited going into it, especially because the mission leading up to it was one of the best ones in Lightfall. And I would say it was a pretty damn good mission in the history of Destiny in general. It was a lot of fun, very intense. Then you encounter the issues. Death pits everywhere. Enemies on every platform that their sole means of actually hurting you for the most part is just booping you off into those death pits to instantly kill you. Enemies that spawn called tormentors that can suppress you, which is in and of itself fine. The issue is when you're trying to grapple around to avoid all of the instant death pits and the enemy's trying to boop you into them, only for a tormentor to suppress you, which instantly breaks your grapple and makes it so you can't use it again, typically while you're over an instant death pit, and you die. The enemies literally do not stop spawning. It doesn't matter how many times you clear them out, they will literally just respawn. If you stay in any one spot for too long, the boss will just bomb it with instant death lasers. So you have to keep moving. You can't try to create any sort of stable ground for yourself to fight from, even for a small period of time while the enemies respawn, because you'll get punished for that. And the Strand subclass that they want you to do is unfortunately quite underpowered, even if it is souped up for the campaign, which it is. We'll get into that in a second as well. Finally, when you get Callus down to a certain amount of health, he gets a massive shield that you can pick down. But if you're trying to use anything other than your super or heavy weapons or special weapons, limited ammo things, it takes forever. Kinetic damage does a pitiful amount of damage to him. And if you stop damaging him for a certain amount of time, the shield will regenerate. Even if you had fully taken it out before, it'll regen to full. And once he starts regenerating it, you can't shoot him to stop it. He becomes immune. So, in all of the chaos of you jumping around, trying to avoid all of the enemies that are trying to boop you off of things, trying to not die to the normal gunfire, trying to find some sort of stable footing for yourself while fighting off the tormentors that are trying to suppress you, you need to be periodically putting damage into Callus that his shield doesn't come back, or you're going to have to spend more time and more resources that you don't have enough of in order to bring the shield down again. Then, when you finally do all that, Phase 2 starts. And you're locked into an even smaller version of the arena with the boss who's gone full melee mode and pursues you relentlessly again while enemies continue to spawn. Fortunately, that phase I found to be not as difficult because you don't have instant death pits and enemies trying to push you into them anymore. So I was able to grapple around using Strand and pick at the boss using like damage over time effects. Like I used Wither Horde, a grenade launcher that puts a poison effect on a boss so like he couldn't regen. I was able to just dump a shot into him, grapple around. It worked. It didn't feel good, but it worked. So it just wasn't a great design compared to the stellar final boss that was Savathun in The Witch Queen. We talked about how Strand is not even that powerful in the campaign, and that's the souped up version. Well, why do I say that? Because when you unlock Strand at the end of the campaign, you have to go around and learn more about it and get the rest of your abilities, which to me, that's fine. I like the game actually encouraging you to get like one bit at a time of your new power so you can spend time with those individual pieces, not get overwhelmed by it, and learn. That's fine. The issue is that in the campaign, all of your cooldowns for all of your abilities are massively reduced. So you can grapple around at high speeds. You have a lot of melee charges. And it feels like even though each individual effect isn't the most powerful, you have enough of it consistently compared to the slower recharging but more powerful abilities that the other subclasses give, that it feels good. Like you're still able to do roughly equivalent things with Strand that you're able to do with your other subclasses. That's not the case when you get Strand after the campaign. Your grapple cooldown is like 1 minute and 45 seconds at base. Imagine trying to play something like Apex Legends with Pathfinder or Titanfall, or hell, Halo Infinite with the Master Chief's grapple, and being able to use it once every almost 2 minutes. This is one of the featured things in Lightfall. And yes, if you use a grapple point in Neomuna, it will reset your cooldown. But if you try to use it in combat at all, let alone anywhere else in the game where there's no grapple points, you're going to be waiting almost 2 minutes unless you build into it very heavily and sacrifice every other aspect of your build just to have a grapple. Is that worth it? I don't know. I haven't done it yet, but it sure doesn't feel good. You have 3 melee charges. Doesn't matter. Each one is on a normal melee charge cooldown. So except for like the very start of a Crucible match where your abilities come in fully charged, you're never going to have all 3 up. Unless you have a very specific build that allows you to do that. And again, you're going to be sacrificing other aspects like general survivability to make that happen. Will that pay off? I don't know. Haven't had the chance to mess with it yet, but it doesn't feel good. Does not feel good at all. So now the question becomes, where do we go from here? Apparently, the seasonal storyline, which came out alongside Lightfall, is actually really good and addresses the whole like war on Earth, oh my God, everything's going to hell in a handbasket type of vibe. That's what I'm here for. That's what everyone I think was here for. So I'm excited to see where that goes. Hopefully that's better. Hopefully the seasonal content is able to carry the absolute dead weight that is Lightfall. Only time will tell. I cannot recommend that anyone, new or returning, pick up this expansion. It's the first time I've ever left a review on anything Destiny related on Steam. It was a negative review. I told people not to get it because it's not worth it. It's not worth the $50 they charge you, US, more if you're anywhere else, to play this. It's terrible. Now, that said, the game is still fun to play, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on. And that's where I want to talk about my Stasis build. Okay, so now that I'm in the game, this is the Solo Legend campaign Stasis Titan build that I used for the majority of the campaign. Obviously, you can use this in more than just Solo Legend content, but this is just what I happened to use after I saw how cool this bow is. It's what inspired me to make this build. So Stasis is something that I've not generally used too much in the past, preferring the light subclasses. But with this bow and with just some of the changes and overall stuff that I saw, I figured it'd be worth giving it a shot. So I threw together a look, which I think is pretty freaking great, honestly. It looks really, really good. And went to town, and it's really nice. So let's start off with the bow. This is Verglass Curve. This is the Season Pass exotic for this season. It is a Stasis bow, and it's awesome. So what it does is as you get final blows, you get stasis arrows, and then the next time you hip fire a shot, you shoot all of them in a volley, and you can store up to 5 at once. So if you're familiar with, say, Ashe from League of Legends, I know it's a cursed name to bring up while I'm already talking about Destiny, which some people view the same way, but if you're familiar at all with Ashe from League of Legends, she has her ice arrow volley that this works very similar to. So the gameplay loop is you snipe a bunch of enemies, bows, headshots, precision damage, very good. Build up ice arrows, then you find a cluster of enemies, or like if you need cover, you can use it for that as well. And you hip fire to drop a bunch of stasis crystals. And I'll have some gameplay up on screen from when I was playing with this, and it's very, very nice. And then what you can do is you can either use those for cover, or you can shatter them with the bow or with something else to create explosions that will then just devastate all enemies around it. So it's a way to just constantly have stasis crystals up while also having a powerful precision weapon. Very good stuff. This is like one of the cornerstones of the build. Then I have my Ikelos shotgun, which is crafted. I'm working on getting it leveled up. This is really just here for like high single target damage where precision damage won't work. And also very important to have some sort of close combat capability. Has Feeding Frenzy, Incandescent, just blows things up, reloads very quickly. It's just a good side piece to the bow. And then my heavy I'm not quite sold on yet. I'm using the Stasis Linear Fusion Rifle Fire and Forget. It has Headstone, allowing me to create more stasis crystals when I headshot enemies with it, which is, again, very synergistic, very good. But I don't really know how I feel about having a second long-range precision damage weapon in this build. I was using the new Stasis Heavy Grenade Launcher that came out with this expansion. That is a wave frame, so it sends a wave of energy along the ground from the impact point of the grenade. It's very, very nice, and it's craftable. So once I can craft a new one of that, I think I'll stick with that because it'll shatter stasis crystals more efficiently. It'll be able to clear out large groups of enemies if I don't have the time or don't want to set up stasis crystals to do it for me. I think it'll function a bit better, but this is a good boss damage option. In terms of armor, I'm spec'd into Resilience as my max because just enemies hurt in Solo Legends, so having maxed out resilience is very important. And then because I'm making stasis crystals with my bow, I wasn't too worried about having a high grenade cooldown, or a low grenade cooldown, I guess I could say. And I opted instead to go as far into intellect as I could afford to get extra supers up. And I know that's probably not the most efficient thing around, but the Behemoth super is really, really nice. And having the ability to punch through stasis crystals more often, make more with the super, just felt right to me. So those are the two stat sets that I spec'd into. We'll go over my mods in a second. And then the exotic that I went with for this build is the Hoarfrost Z, which replaces my barricade with a wall of stasis crystals. Again, making more crystals is good. Being able to panic, put down my barrier, freeze a bunch of enemies around me, use it as cover, shoot individual crystals off of it to explode, deal damage to enemies. It's really, really nice. And then, of course, standing behind it will still give you increased reload speed, stability, range, all that type of stuff. So you can use it as a good cover point as well, which is awesome. Something that I am considering switching off to, though, and we'll go over this in a second when we talk about the aspects that I have, is this new exotic that I got at the end of the campaign, the Cadmus Ridge Lance Cap. This is obviously a stasis exotic, and what it does is it allows your Diamond Lance, which is another aspect of the subclass, to create stasis crystals on impact when thrown, with more crystals created by hitting bosses and vehicles. And while using a stasis subclass and behind your rally barricade, rapid precision hits and combatant final blows with a stasis weapon creates a Diamond Lance near you. So this is for the Diamond Lance build, and that's the second half of this build as a damage option. That makes things really, really nice. So considering I've got my primary weapon is a stasis weapon, and my heavy weapon is a stasis weapon, I'll be getting Diamond Lances quite frequently. What is a Diamond Lance, you might ask? Well, let's look at my aspects and fragments here. So I'm using Glacier Grenade because, more stasis crystals is good. But then I have Tectonic Harvest, a Petrified Grip, grasping for something once held but now lost. Shattering a stasis crystal creates a stasis shard. This shard grants melee energy when picked up by you or your allies. Lots of shattering of stasis crystals here with the bow. I've got a lot of stasis crystals I can break. So I'm getting my melee up quite often, which means I didn't have to spec into it stat-wise in my armor. Very solid. Diamond Lance. Shattering or defeating targets with stasis abilities or weapons creates a stasis lance. Again, we've got two stasis weapons that we're using here. So, kill anything with the bow, stasis lance. Kill anything with the linear fusion or the grenade launcher, stasis lance. Kill anything with any of my stasis abilities, stasis lance. You can pick this up, and it is a javelin that you're holding in third person, and you can throw it to deal damage to an enemy, freeze it, all that type of good stuff, which you can then shatter to get more Diamond Lances, more shatter effects going on. Or if you're in melee, you can actually slam it into the ground to do an AoE damage and freeze. So really good, and this is just a free resource. So long as you're killing stuff with stasis, so long as you're shattering things, you'll have these just scattered around the battlefield that you can use to do whatever it is that you want to do. Very strong. As far as fragments are concerned, I've got Fissures, increase the damage and size of the burst of stasis when I destroy a stasis crystal. Again, the whole build is made around destroying stasis crystals, so bigger explosions, more damage, sounds good. Hedrons, increases weapon stability, aim assist, airborne effectiveness, mobility, resilience, and recovery after freezing a target with stasis. We're literally always freezing stuff. Both of my weapons can do it. All of my abilities can do it. My exotic armor allows me to do it. So this basically just means that I'm always going to have higher stats. It's just free stats. Why would I not want it? Shards. Shattering stasis crystals temporarily boosts my grenade recharge rate. Shattering additional stasis crystals increases the duration of this benefit, and it gives me extra resilience. So again, not too worried about speccing into my discipline stat to get more grenade recharge, because I can just do it with Whisper of Shards. Would it be even faster if I specced into it? Sure, but I don't need it. This gives me more than enough. Rhyme. Collecting a stasis shard grants a small amount of overshield, which falls off after 10 seconds. Collecting additional shards adds to the overshield and refreshes the timer. So again, just become harder to kill. You're getting shards when you're shattering stuff, when you're shattering crystals. You go pick up those shards, you get an overshield. It technically counts as healing. It makes it harder for enemies to kill you. Sounds great. Awesome. Allows you to get in there and just keep on blasting. And finally, Whisper of Bonds. Defeating frozen targets grants me super energy. Again, like even though you're taking a hit to your stats on this, I'm specced into intellect. So I'm getting my super more quickly than I would anyway. And we always have stuff frozen, which means we're getting our super faster, which means freezing more stuff, and it just goes and goes and goes. And I mean, are there ways to optimize this? Probably. I just threw this together over the course of maybe 5 minutes in the middle of playing the campaign, and it's worked incredibly well. Next, let's look at our mods. The mods I really need to work with more because the armor charge system is weird and I'm not used to it. But basically, I have a bunch of resilience stat boosts, a little bit of a discipline boost because it got me to the next tier, a little bit of intellect boost, just some stat boosts across the board to even out the build. With better armor optimization, I wouldn't need these, but I need to find the armor to do that. I have heavy ammo finder, increased drop chance of heavy ammo on kill. Having more heavy ammo, especially with the grenade launcher, means more booms, more shattering. Very good. Focusing strike grants class ability energy when you cause damage with a melee attack. I'm using my class ability to make my barricade to get more stasis crystals, which I then want to destroy with my melee to explode them to deal more damage to enemies, which is then going to get me my class ability back. Again, it's just that recursive cycle. Go, go, go. Emergency reinforcement. Collecting an orb of power causes you to gain 1 temporary armor charge. When my shields become broken, I gain temporary damage reduction. So, I'm in there amongst the enemies. I'm shattering crystals, killing stuff with my shotgun, throwing javelins around. When my shields get broken, I just become harder to damage, and I'll be picking up orbs of power that I'm generating because I'm on top of the enemy. Stasis weapon surge. Collecting an orb of power causes you to gain 1 temporary armor charge. Your stasis weapons gain a small bonus to damage while you have any armor charge. 2 of my weapons are stasis weapons. This just means free damage pretty much all the time. Reaper. After using your class ability, your next weapon final blow spawns an orb of power. Again, we're making a lot of crystals using our class ability, which we want to use to shatter stuff to charge all of our other abilities. May as well make orbs of power, which gives us super energy and powers these armor mods. Rapid stasis weapon final blows create an orb of power. Same thing. Point of focus, bonus discipline while you have any armor charge, which means that we're going to get grenades more often. You gain a bonus to resilience while you have any armor charge, just become harder to kill. Again, this is happening when we're picking up those orbs of power. Your stasis weapons gain a small bonus to damage while you have any armor charge. Again, just stacking this up more. More damage equals good. I shouldn't have to tell you that. Decaying armor charge has a longer duration, so now we have these benefits for longer. When your grenade energy is fully expended, you gain grenade energy. Again, who needs to get discipline? We've got mods for this stuff. Just give me more free grenade energy, please. And then charged up increases the maximum number of stacks of armor charge you can carry by 1. So we just have more of this resource to go off of. This build has absolutely been slaying out for me, and it is nowhere near optimized. I absolutely plan on, as I continue to play, finding better armor that'll synergize better with my stats. I'm going to experiment with this Cadmus Ridge Lance Cap. I think this could be really fun. I have to see how it impacts me not having the Stasis Barricade, but I don't think that that's necessarily going to be a bad thing, so I'm excited to try this out. And, people have been saying that Stasis builds got absolutely devastated with the mod changes. I can't really speak to that since I didn't really use Stasis prior to this season, but I'm loving this build. So if you're a Titan, you're looking for a Stasis build, consider trying some of this stuff out. It's been a ton of fun. And fortunately, has helped buoy me in the overall disappointment that has been the Lightfall campaign. Hopefully, the seasonal story content makes up for stuff. I absolutely plan on seeing what I can pull off with Strand as I unlock more about it. And the game should still be fun. I'm just very concerned for the narrative cohesion, which has been one of the things that I've always cared about the most in Destiny. So that said, guys, thank you for allowing me to vent a little bit. We'll be getting back to Tactics Ogre and Fire Emblem content coming up here now. I love Destiny, and I want to see it perform better, and I'd love to feel good about having it on the channel, but given the negative reception towards Lightfall, unless there's more stuff to talk about in terms of the narrative and criticizing stuff, I can't see myself bringing Destiny back to the channel anytime soon. So let me know what you guys think if you've been playing, what your thoughts are on the expansion, if you have any cool builds, all that type of good stuff. But until the next time, again, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.